Live from the Four Seasons Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri, HEC-TV proudly presents the 2017 ADL Torch of Liberty Award. Here's your host, Suzanne Vanderhall.
Hi, and welcome to HEC-TV's live coverage of the 2017 ADL Torch of Liberty Award. The Torch of Liberty Award, it honors a community leader who promotes respect, counters hatred and bigotry, and promotes fair treatment for all. This year's recipient is Noemi Neidorff. She's being honored for the work that she does in the community, and in addition, Mrs. Neidorff, who is herself a classically trained musician, is a huge patron of the arts here in St. Louis. So among those honoring her this evening will be members of the arts community, and we'll be hearing some performances from a trio of viola, violin, and cello from the Youth Symphony Orchestra. But before that, we're going to take a look at a little video from a different award the ADL gave in 1963 to then President JFK. It was called the America's Democratic Legacy Award.
It is with the very deepest sense of pride that on behalf of the Anti-Defamation League, I present America's Democratic Legacy Award to the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy.
The men who first shaped the democratic legacy that you honor tonight were filled with a sense of excitement and of wonder at the importance of the events in which they were participating. America was to be the great experiment, a testing ground for political liberty, a model for democratic government. And although the first task was to mold a nation on these principles here in this continent, we would also lead the fight against tyranny in all continents. This is a great inheritance. It is a proud privilege to be a citizen of the great republic, to realize that we are the descendants of 40 million people who left other countries, other familiar scenes, to come here to the United States to build a new life, to make a new opportunity for themselves and their children. I think it is not a burden, but a privilege to have the chance to share that great concept among all of our people, to make this really, as it was for them, a new world for us, and indeed for all those who look to us. That is what this organization has stood for 50 years. That's what this country has stood for 200 years. And that's what this country will continue to stand for. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Vicker, and I serve as the Regional Advisory Board Chair for the ADL's Missouri, Eastern Kansas, and Southern Illinois office. That video is remarkable not only as history, but as a current event. In 1958, ADL reached out to the then junior senator from Massachusetts, and he agreed to write an essay highlighting the contribution of immigrants at a time when the country was locked in a debate about the direction its policy should take. Posthumously published in 1964, A Nation of Immigrants was published again by ADL in 2008, along with an educator's guide for high school students, which includes activities and readings to help them learn and understand our nation's history through modern conversation. It is the way we do things, using history, activities, film, social media, museums, and yes, music, to learn about ourselves and others. We each have a unique story that connects us to ADL and the work of seeking justice for all through education and advocacy. My story began in an ice rink. Anti-Semitic words were said to my teammates and I during a game. My parents, fearing for their safety and for ours, decided to leave the ice rink in a pack and even drive home in a caravan to ensure the safety of all of us. My parents are here tonight with my special guest, my oldest daughter, Ansley. Marty Oberman, as many of you know, involved in just about everything, including hockey, at that point contacted the ADL office to report the issue and even put together a meeting in his home for all of us. About a month later, my mother was contacted with a new program confronting anti-Semitism to help with workshops. Then, when a World of Different Institute was developed, she became a facilitator. She has served on the board and the executive board and continues to serve. This was my first experience with ADL, but I was still in high school. Having returned to St. Louis after about 10 years away attending school and playing hockey, and then, as you know, some people know, more hockey, I got involved. First with the Steinberg Institute, now known as Glass Leadership, then coming to the board, chairing international affairs, and from there, the rest is history, as they say, and now I stand before you as board chair. So thank you to my mother and father. So tonight, we will enjoy dinner. We will learn from friends on how they work with us, hear a little music, recognize our Torch of Liberty honoree, Noemi Neidorff, and ultimately help you learn more about ADL than you did before you came, and how, as leaders in the community, can be part of our work. To our friends at Centene, Monsanto, the Estates, Nancy and Ken Kranzberg, the Sabin Wealth Management Group of Wells Fargo, the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, the Steinberg Family Foundation, and Bonnie and Gary Vicker, thank you for your truly generous sponsorship. Trust me, the money donated tonight has direct impact on improving this community, our community. We also bring with you this evening the special partnership of the St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra and Opera Theater of St. Louis, our media sponsor, HEC-TV, who we are thankful that you and the web are helping us reach so many who cannot be in the room tonight. You should know, if you didn't see the signs, we are being live streamed and taped for rebroadcast, so I thank you for your consent. We are grateful for the staff of the Four Seasons who have been so helpful, particularly the general manager, Alper Oztak, himself an immigrant to this country with his wife Nicole from Turkey. So now please enjoy dinner, and we'll be back shortly to continue the program. Thank you for being here.
Hi, welcome back. And while everyone who's attending is enjoying their dinner, I am lucky enough now to be joined by the ADL Regional Director, Karen Aresti. Karen, tell me, what is going on here tonight?
other than a party. ADL has an award that we give to people called the Torch of Liberty, and it recognizes folks who really outdo themselves in supporting democracy. It's about people who are potent in the community, who've been around a long time, the variety of people who've been honored over the years. Last year we honored Senator Jack Danforth for the many years of service that he's done for the community and with us. So this year, because the immigrant experience is one that's being challenged right now quite a bit in the United States, I wanted to recognize somebody in that unique world, and thankfully Noemi Neidorff is somebody with whom we've been engaging for a couple of decades. She herself an immigrant to this country in 1957, having fled, and you'll hear the story a little bit more full later. She fled at the October Revolution, when the Hungarian government was being challenged for its ties with the Soviets. She was 8 years old, and it was a horrific trip. Her family came here, did what a lot of immigrants do, which is to say establish themselves well, and then frankly gave back to the community. It's one of the things we see from the immigrant population in this region consistently. She also was a pianist, or is a pianist, I should say. She started playing when she was 4, very well. And so she's concentrated a lot of her work in music and the arts, particularly with emerging artists. And we love music. I can say that very personally. There are a lot of things that we use as an agency to bring people together and build community. Music is one of them. The great variety of ways in which we can all gather together is a really big deal for us. So this is going to be one of our opportunities to showcase musicians from the St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra. Monsanto has what they call the Artist in Training Program for Opera Theater of St. Louis, and Raina Campbell, who is currently that artist, studying in New York, has come back for this event to sing for us tonight. And maybe at the end we'll all sing a little bit together. I don't know. We'll give it a shot. But that's the goal, to let people know who we are, what we do. Sometimes I think the big challenge is that people say, oh, well, I've heard of ADL, but I'm really not sure what you do on the ground.
Well, okay, to that end, what is it that you do on the ground?
3 buckets: education, advocacy, and work with law enforcement. The education piece is anti-bias learning, what's now called early elementary, 0 to 8 years old, and K through 12, campus, community. And frankly, we'll engage with anybody who wants to work with us. We have the flexibility of our programs to essentially create an anti-bias approach in lots of different ways, and we do that. And have done that for years. Partnership works for us. On the advocacy side, we are the agency that wrote the hate crime statute, which is law in, 45 states and the District of Columbia. So people who are victims of hate crime, community building after hate crime issues hit a particular community, the notion of minimizing targeting against a particular group, and frankly, in this season, those issues that have come up with the immigrant community, immigrant and refugee community. And then finally, in law enforcement. Frankly, police are our first responders in protecting us within democracy. I know that's a challenging conversation to be had in this town, and it has been, certainly since the events of Ferguson. We don't shy away from talking about it, and yet we know that there are police allies out there who are working on they do want to do the work. So we do anti-bias education with police, we do counterterrorism education with police, we use our friends at the St. Louis Holocaust Museum to talk about how Holocaust history affects policing and community, and generally work to protect others in our partnerships with policing. So those are the 3 buckets.
What is your biggest challenge right now you all face?
In all honesty, not a day goes by without something happening. Whether it's an anti-Semitic incident, something that looks like an anti-Semitic incident but isn't, a hate crime against an immigrant. The LGBTQ community has been hit terribly, particularly transgender women of color. School issues are all over the place, whether they're actually happening in school, outside of school and end up in the building because that's the way kids are, or in cyberspace. Cyber hate is a big deal right now. I think the challenge is all over the place and it's in every layer. So I think for us, the most important thing is going to be to try and innovate over the next few years, to keep ahead of the technology changes, to perhaps work with big data to try and identify when things are going to happen and be able to help law enforcement. We're going to do a lot of work in Jefferson City, I can say, around issues that will come up there. Religious freedom is going to be a big issue. And we're just going to try and reach as many teachers, youth, parents, administrators as we possibly can. And roughly in a good year, we hit about 5,000 people.
Well, and it's certainly something that ADL has been doing for a long time. In fact, I think we have a video to go to right now that's going to show 100 years of ADL history. It's narrated by James Earl Jones. When anything is narrated by James Earl Jones, it sounds that much more credible. So there you are. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and take a look at that video and see what the ADL has been doing for the last century.
This nation is a work in progress. We are a promise and a dream. We are a nation built upon the principles of equality and justice, but still striving to realize our ideals, to fulfill the promise, to perfect the dream. That is why ADL was founded 100 years ago, and why ADL still exists today. In each generation since its founding, the Anti-Defamation League has been a force for change, a champion of our nation's values and a shield against hate and extremism. (1913). The Jewish community of the United States faced rampant anti-Semitism and overt discrimination. Books, plays, and above all newspapers depicted Jews with crude stereotypes. Against this backdrop of bigotry and intolerance, an attorney from Chicago named Sigmund Livingston put forth a bold idea to create an organization with the mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment to all. Starting with a $200 budget and 2 desks in Livingston's law office, the Anti-Defamation League was founded with the clear understanding that the fight against one form of prejudice could not succeed without battling prejudice in all forms. During this same time, an event in Georgia makes the need for the organization painfully clear. Leo Frank, a Jewish businessman who moves to Atlanta to manage his family's pencil factory, is convicted of the rape and murder of a 13-year-old female employee, following a trial which was defined by anti-Semitism. When the governor reduces his death sentence to life in prison, a mob, including some influential community leaders, drags Frank from his prison cell and lynches him. It is not until decades later, at ADL's urging, that the state of Georgia issues Frank a posthumous pardon. The 1920s. 200,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan parade down Pennsylvania Avenue promoting hatred of blacks, Jews, Catholics, and immigrants. They are inspired by the anti-Semitic newspaper series, The International Jew, which portrays Jews as malicious schemers plotting to control the world. The hateful series is not published by the Klan, but rather by one of America's most renowned industrialists, Henry Ford. ADL steps up, challenging Ford's lies and propaganda with truth. The League publishes The Poison Pen and also begins to expose the men hiding behind the white hoods. The 1930s. The voice is no longer familiar, but in the 1930s, millions of people tuned in each week to hear Father Charles Coughlin's radio programs as he railed against Jewish bankers and the so-called Jewish conspiracy for control.
He and his Wall Streeters, whom he represents, become distorters of history.
Following the Nazi rise to power in Germany, the darkness cast its shadow in the U.S., too. In 1939, the German-American Bund filled Madison Square Garden with 20,000 cheering followers. Meeting the growing challenges, ADL monitors the spread of fascism from coast to coast and builds coalitions to respond. The 1940s. As Hitler's armies march across Europe, the Third Reich carries out its final solution to the so-called Jewish question. By the war's end, 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children, are ruthlessly murdered in the Holocaust. At home, ADL launches massive research operations to uncover Nazi supporters and hate groups in the U.S. Increasingly, the FBI and the press turn to ADL for its expertise. In 1942, a letter of apology is sent to ADL stating, "The hate-mongering prevalent for some time in this country against the Jew is a distinct disservice to our country and to the peace and welfare of humanity." It is signed, Henry Ford.
With United States recognition, the new Jewish state is launched.
The United Nations votes to establish a Jewish state, giving new hope to a people shattered by the Holocaust. With this new hope comes a new reality. as war is instantly declared on Israel by neighboring Arab states. Adapting to the new landscape, ADL works to defend the small nation against its detractors and creates programs to bring about greater understanding and awareness for Israel and its people. The 1950s. ADL enters the fight for civil rights and joins the coalition in Brown versus the Board of Education, the landmark case which ends separate but equal in public schools. The League joins the chorus of voices led by Dr. Martin Luther King, who implores we must face the tragic fact that we are far from the promised land in the struggle for a desegregated society. Literally exposing the KKK, ADL champions anti-masking laws, which prevent Klansmen from wearing hoods in public, leading to a dramatic drop in Klan membership.
It is with the very deepest sense of pride that on behalf of the Anti-Defamation League, I present America's Democratic Legacy Award to the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy.
I'm honored to receive this award from an organization which on its 50th anniversary should itself be receiving an honor for distinguished contribution to the enrichment of America's democratic legacy. Your tireless pursuit of equality of treatment for all Americans has made a lasting and substantial contribution to our democracy.
The crowd assembled around the reflecting pool before the Lincoln Memorial occupies every inch on the lawns and under the trees, and there's a great swell of cheers to welcome Martin Luther King to the speaker's podium.
The 1960s. The civil rights movement intensifies for freedom and equal rights. In Mississippi, civil rights workers, 1 black and 2 Jewish, are murdered for trying to register black voters. The 1970s. ADL spearheads one of the nation's first Holocaust education programs, pioneering teaching materials for students and educators to understand the Holocaust and apply its lessons to contemporary issues of prejudice and hate. The 1980s. ADL joins the struggle to end the persecution of Jews in the Soviet Union, a chilling reminder that state-sponsored anti-Semitism still exists. In the U.S., ADL's education and civil rights work expands significantly. It advances the fight for religious freedom, protecting the rights of all faiths, and ensuring the separation between church and state. The struggle to integrate Boston's school system leads to the creation of a far-reaching initiative to increase intergroup understanding.
A new statewide campaign against prejudice of all kinds is being launched today with the help of Channel 5. The governor and the mayor of Boston were on hand today to help kick off the year-long campaign called A World of Difference.
Since then, ADL's award-winning education programs have reached 56 million students, teachers, business leaders, and community members around the world. The 1990s. Hate now has a new mask. ADL exposes how the internet radically transforms extremism, enabling racists, anti-Semites, and terrorists to communicate and recruit globally. ADL provides comprehensive resources on cyber hate to governments, schools, parents, and children, and works to expose those who promote it. Hate-motivated violence shakes our nation time and again. The Crown Heights riots, the Oklahoma City bombing, the Columbine school shootings, the murders of Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. These incidents underscore the urgency of the mission. Demand for ADL programs and expertise surges. Innovative initiatives like ADL peer training reduce tensions and build understanding. September 11th, 2001. The day hate and terror became everyone's problem. In the wake of 9/11, ADL emerges as the premier non-government organization training law enforcement on extremism, terrorism, and hate crime response, a critical partnership. Simultaneously, the League's outreach helps schools, families, and communities to cope and to build unity. ADL leads the decade-long fight for federal hate crime legislation, finally celebrating the passage of the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act of 2009. For 100 years, the Anti-Defamation League has been a force for change, a champion of our nation's values, and a shield against hate and extremism. ADL has come a long way, from 2 desks in a Chicago law firm to an internationally recognized leader in the fight against prejudice, bigotry, and hate. With 28 offices across the country and a team of professionals and lay leaders dedicated to stopping the defamation of the Jewish people and securing justice and fair treatment to all. ADL begins its 2nd century knowing that there is much more work to be done. Imagine a world without hate. ADL will not rest until the dream becomes a reality.
Imagine a world without hate.
And we are joined now by the ADL Education Director for the World of Difference Institute, Tabari Coleman. Tabari, what is the World of Difference Institute?
So the ADL's World of Difference Institute is the largest education program of the ADL. That was started in Boston in 1985. Started off as a result of the race riots that were going on due to busing, and it grew from there. And so we have 28 offices, actually 30 offices, but 28 offices that have institute programs. And so we go into schools, community organizations, businesses, providing anti-bias and diversity training programs.
And what do you specifically do in the St. Louis region?
A little bit of everything. I do a lot of professional development, really asking folks to have courageous conversations within their environments, asking them to think critically about the issues that are relevant in our society right now and how those manifest in their workplaces.
So what types of things do you do when you go into these workplaces?
Well, so the first thing we do is do an assessment with the organization to find out what sort of work they've done prior, get a sense of the sort of conversations that they've been having, and then build from there. And so the assessment allows us to get a sense of what starting point we need to begin at, right? To figure out whether or not, if you've done work and you have a good understanding of what the issues around anti-bias education is, then we don't have to start at 1.0, right? We might be able to move into 2.0. And so it's really about trying to move the conversations forward in a meaningful way, not give you too much, right, right at the start, but really meet you where you are.
And is there one particular type of issue or problem that you're sort of seeing now more than ever, or is it kind of been constant?
For us, it's been pretty constant in the sense that the issues around anti-bias education, around diversity, around inclusion, around stereotyping, prejudice, those have always existed. And so what we're seeing as a result of the last couple of years, and most recently the recent election, is that folks are realizing that we need to be engaged in these conversations. We need to be intentional about recognizing these issues have always been present. It's uncomfortable for a lot of people because we all want to believe the people who we're around they're good people, we love them, we have good relationships with them, but I think all of us harbor some form of prejudice against different people. And so how do we recognize that and figure out what to do about that? I think right now, more than any other time, and at least in my lifetime, we see so many people realizing that their loved ones, their colleagues have some different feelings that they didn't know about. And I think those things have always been present, but we haven't actually been in the space to talk about those things. And so I think that's where we come in as far as helping people begin those conversations.
Well, as you said, sometimes there's family members that have differing views, and this is a time of year when we spend a lot of time with family members that we maybe don't spend as much time with the rest of the year. What are some tips that people can do? What are things people should look out for? How should people address things when maybe kind of uncomfortable situations or conversations come up around the holiday celebration?
I think the first thing is to listen. We all want to be heard. How do we affirm people? How do we say, I may not necessarily agree with where you're coming from, but there's something about what you're saying that resonates with me in some way or another. When I think about the election, or I think about the #MeToo movement happening right now, can I take a moment and think about how I might have engaged in any of the issues that might have made other people feel uncomfortable? People want to avoid these conversations we want to avoid these conversations, period, with everybody. And so how do you figure out how to listen to people, how to respect where they're coming from, even if you don't agree, and how to maintain a relationship to be able to continue those conversations?
And also, you had mentioned earlier, especially being in our community, there's been some heightened tension with law enforcement. You guys are working with them as well. What are you doing?
We are. So later on this evening, I'm going to be talking a little bit about our implicit bias for law enforcement. And this is where we are actively engaging law enforcement in conversations about the way that their bias plays out in their interactions with different people in the community. You see constantly the protests happening. There's not a day you don't turn on the news and you hear about some sort of officer-involved shooting. We don't take the position that police officers are bad, right? Individuals can be bad. Individuals make bad choices, and so I think collectively, when we bring law enforcement groups together, what we're trying to do is engage them in meaningful conversations about how do they view those individuals that they stop, right? Everybody says it's a case-by-case basis, and I want to believe that, but I also know that I have my own prejudices, and so we're trying to get them to think about that and to think about the power that they yield that's much different than the everyday citizen in our society.
My name is Karen Oresti. I'm the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League for Missouri, Eastern Kansas, and Southern Illinois. At this time, I'd like to ask St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger, who wants to come up and say a few words. I, as a member of the St. Louis County Human Relations Commission for a number of years, have been engaged in these issues in the county. I'm glad that Mr. Stenger is here to be with us. He's got to be on the road, but he wanted to say a few words. But in keeping with our theme, I learned from his online bio that at an early age, Steve's parents, Pete and Joanne, instilled in him the values of hard work and determination. And out of curiosity, I looked up his last name. Ancestry.com shares that the name Stenger is an occupational one. That's true for a lot of us in this room. Named for a postmaker or a carpenter. From Middle High German, Stange means pole. And it turns out that Steve's dad was a telephone lineman with Southwestern Bell for more than 40 years. Don't you just love coincidences like that? Please welcome County Executive Steve Stenger.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Karen. And I might add, to honor my father, he also had perfect attendance for those 42 years that he worked for Southwestern Bell and AT&T. Pretty incredible. But Thank you. Thank you very much. And it is indeed a privilege to join you this evening as we honor Noemi Neidorff. Noemi was born, thank you. Thank you. Noemi was born behind the Iron Curtain. She started life with little in war-torn Hungary. She escaped with her family to America. And as soon as she was able to do so, Noemi began giving back to this country that embraced and nurtured her. Noemi's story is a synopsis of the way in which America became a torch of liberty to the world. Her experience serves as a lesson that in welcoming immigrants, America becomes stronger, healthier, and a more prosperous nation. Noemi has shared her good fortune and her talent in so many ways. A classically trained pianist, her love of fine art and culture is reflected in her generosity to Opera Theater of St. Louis, the St. Louis Symphony, the Missouri History Museum, the Washington University Department of Music, the Radio Arts Foundation, and numerous other organizations. In her Clayton home, this immigrant American still has the knapsacks that held her family's few possessions when they crossed the border into Austria in 1956 to escape the Hungarian Revolution. It should come as no surprise that someone who treasures such reminders of an impoverished childhood would serve as the driving force behind the Neidorff family and Centene Corporation deanship at the Brown School of Social Work and Public Health at Washington University, which focuses on helping families, especially children who are in need. On behalf of the 1 million residents of St. Louis County, I congratulate Noemi on this well-deserved award, and I thank her for her tremendous contributions to our community. Again, thank you all very much for letting me be part of this special evening. Thank you.
It's time to introduce some of our friends who work with us and can help explain a little bit more than you may know about ADL and how we do things. That's one of the challenges we have. Everybody says, oh, well, we've heard of ADL, but what is it you actually do? Well, hopefully you'll leave tonight knowing a bit more. If I can call up Chief Rick Knox. In 2007, Richard Knox was sworn in as Chief of Police for the city of Olivet, having begun his career as a police officer with Olivet in 1978. Chief Knox has been a special friend to ADL for many years now, supporting a number of different programs that we do with law enforcement jurisdictions. He currently sits as a member of the executive board of the St. Louis FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force and the Greater St. Louis Major Case Squad and the Board of Managers for the St. Louis County and Municipal Police Academy. He's the past chair of the St. Louis Area Police Chiefs Memorial Prayer Breakfast Committee, honoring fallen police officers. He holds a master's in Criminal Justice Administration from Lindenwood and a bachelor's in Criminal Justice from Tarkio College. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy and the Naval Postgraduate School's Homeland Security Executive Leaders Program. For ADL, he and his department have been remarkable first responders, consistent and engaged, and I'd like to say there have been no issues in the city of Olivet that we have had to address, but unfortunately over the years there have been quite a few. Additionally, his interests include criminal intelligence and information sharing between federal, state, and local law enforcement jurisdictions, CVE, we call that, countering violent extremism, and learning how to identify these types of individuals in local communities. He was also the driving, and when I say driving force, I mean driving force between our counterterrorism mission to Israel this past March, about which I believe he will share a bit. Please welcome Chief Rick Knox.
It was sort of embarrassing, all that stuff that she was saying about me. But good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Knox, and borrowing a line from Dragnet Sergeant Joe Friday, I'm a cop. I inhale, I exhale, I sleep, I walk, I talk, and I live my life as a cop. I have been a police officer for the city of Olivet for 40 years. And prior to that, I served my country for 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. So when it's my time, if my headstone says, "Here lies a cop," with the symbol of the Marine Corps' Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, I am sure that I'll rest comfortably into an eternity. When people ask me what it takes to be a police officer, the first thing I say is we wear our badge with honor. You have to be honest. You have to be trustworthy. You have to be loyal. And you have to be dedicated. You have to have courage, but you also have to have compassion. When I talk about this badge, the most important value in my profession is integrity. Integrity is a promise to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the state of Missouri, and to serve and protect the communities where we live and work. I have integrity, and a majority of the police officers in this country have honor and have integrity. We as law enforcement need to be on the top of our game more than ever at this time in our lives. And to get there, we need to train and train and train. I want to share a couple words how we train with the ADL. Law enforcement and society, these are lessons learned from the Holocaust and the ADL and the St. Louis Holocaust Museum. My officers have been participating in this training since 2005. The goal of the law enforcement and society is to provide police with the deeper understanding of the relationship between us and our communities, our role as defenders of the Constitution and protectors of these individuals. Officers learn the dangers of bigotry and fanatical leadership posed to all of us. Law enforcement and society underscores the important place on police as our first line of defense to ensure protections of our constitutional rights. In the St. Louis area, all new recruits from St. Louis City and St. Louis County in the academies, they take this training at the Holocaust Museum sponsored through the ADL. And at this time, Karen is talking with the Southern Illinois Law Enforcement Commanders and Commission and trying to get this training for their officers on the other side of the river. Second thing is, and this happened to me about 8 or 9 years ago, is on a Friday night at 5 o'clock, the skinheads and neo-Nazis showed up in Olivet without us even knowing. My first call was to Karen. I said, "Who are these people?" And we got it all worked out, and we talked about it, and we put them in their place and let them do their free speech, but Karen was a big help for me then. So that's where I started partnering with Karen. And she provides the training of programs for domestic and international terrorism. Some of these individuals are very dangerous, and we have to know the resources, and we have to have resources. And Karen's provides that for all of us. Myself and 5 other police chiefs from Creve Coeur, Clayton, Frontenac, Florissant, and St. Anne all took an international trip on counterterrorism to Israel. And while some in this area, they believe that we went over there to learn how to oppress people of color, which was the farthest thing from the truth. If they were going to do that, I wouldn't have been part of that. What we did learn is we learned that we need to watch and report. If we see something, we need to report it. Terrorism is not going to go away in this country ever. And the other thing I'd like to say is not only did we meet with the Israelis, we met with the police chief of the Palestinian Authority, and we sat down and we had a meal with them, just like we did with anyone else. I want to thank the ADL. I want to thank the support of the people who sponsor the ADL. I think that this is important training that hopefully the ADL will be able to send more senior law enforcement officers from our area in 2019. I'm glad to share this evening with you and share my experience, and I want to congratulate Mrs. Neidorff for her award tonight, and thank you very much.
Senator Jack Danforth, as part of the St. Louis 2004 project, established a group that was called Living in Community. One of the programs that came out of that that's still alive is called the U.S. Attorney's Hate Crimes Task Force. Gedlu, can I ask you to come up? I'm sure where Gedlu is. There you are. Come on up. Gedlu Metaferia is an old friend of the Anti-Defamation League, serving for many, many years on the U.S. Attorney's Hate Crimes Task Force. We first met when he was representing the Ethiopian Community Association of Missouri, which he founded. He then established the African Mutual Assistance Association of Missouri, and we continued to work together. Now, as a specialist in refugee resettlement with the International Institute, Gedlu began his life's work in Ethiopia as a public health officer. But he had to leave due to political concerns, and he came to the United States in 1980. He's lived in St. Louis for many, many years, now with his wife and 3 children. He joined our regional advisory board this past September. Please welcome Gedlu Metaferia.
Thank you, Karen, for that warm introduction. Bear with me if you understand my accent. I dedicate this small talk for ADL, and I also called an immigrant soldier who served in Iraq, a legal permanent resident. Those of you who may know, there are about an estimated 45,000 to 50,000 legal permanent residents who serve in our military. And some of them has given their ultimate sacrifice, that is their lives. My name is Gedlu Metaferia, and I serve on the ADL Regional Advisory Board. I am with you tonight to share my experience as a long-time participant of the U.S. Attorney's Hate Crimes Task Force, and as an immigrant to this community. I came to the task force as a founder of the African Mutual Assistance Association of Missouri, and I now work in the refugee resettlement with the International Institute. The task force, chaired by the U.S. attorneys for Eastern District of Missouri and the Southern District of Illinois, represents allies and communities engaged in people in the 9 counties. The ADL has staffed the work of the group since 2000. From the beginning in 1997, the task force has grown to include more than 90 representatives of federal, state, and local law enforcement, as well as educators, social service justice leaders, advocates for racial and ethnic groups and the interfaith community. While a number of these groups were created in the mid-1990s, there are only a handful still operating. It is because of this commitment by partners with ADL, the International Institute, the Interfaith Partnership, federal, state, and local law enforcement, and every single U.S. attorney who has served in the region since 1997. But the need to address hate crimes is more important. After 9/11, it was members of the task force who came together to say, hate shall not give birth to more hate. We hosted law enforcement training programs, created unique engagement opportunities. From 2003, with the attack in Baldwin on the Hindu temple, to the 2013 killing in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, on the Sikh community, every new event gives the task force members a chance to learn how to work together to support and respond. It is ADL that created the model for hate crimes statutes back in the early 1980s. Now, 45 states and the District of Columbia have enacted hate crimes laws based on the model. ADL is also led large coalition of organizations to spearhead passages of the Matthew Shepard, James Baird Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which ensured federal hate crimes law. The federal hate crimes statistics for 2016, released just 2 weeks ago, with the rise against traditionally targeted Jews, Muslims, members of the LGBTQ community, and with the first set of data since it started its collection in 2015. On the attacks on Sikhs, Arabs, and Hindus, who are often victims because their appearance in the religious dress sets them apart from each other. We can speculate about this. There is some thought that the Syrian refugee crisis is a large part of the current anger towards immigrants and refugees. We have talked about political rhetoric against the Mexican community, Muslims, and shifts in immigration policy, but our challenges in supporting victims of hate and bias about principles, not politics. The most significant aspect of Hate Crime Task Force is that people meet people. Police meet immigrants. LGBTQ members in the community meet police. We talk, we discuss issues, we learn about each other. You will hear more in the coming year about how ADL will be working with big data to help create analytics, to better research trends, and perpetrators to better help police challenge hate and bias in communities. But for me, as a former refugee from a war-torn African nation of Ethiopia, the success of American exceptionalism in its immigration tapestry of history is rooted in its embrace of diverse phases, cultures, and people. Where there is shortcoming in our history, we grow by correcting our steps through advocacy and constitutional remedies for respect of our common humanity without leaving anyone else. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I have learned from ADL. It has given me hope and skills to serve others, to advocate for respect and welcoming the stranger. It has enabled me to teach about bullying to my children so that they can protect themselves through awareness, become the protectors of their classmates, and respect their friends. In addition, I have mentored tomorrow's leaders, including immigrant, legal permanent army recruits, the young immigrants in the African community. I have encouraged young doctors, scientists, writers, and faith leaders, women and men, to serve in our great institutions and nation by renewing their hopes and dreams. When I am down, I raise my head and look forward by reading the hopeful immigrant history of this great nation. To me, ADL is a success story of respect since 1913, and it is a center of inclusion woven into the American history for its ethical and moral progress. Thank you.
If I could call up Dr. Adriano Udani. Dr. Udani is an assistant professor of political science with a joint appointment in the School of Public Policy and Administration at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. He specializes in the study of political attitudes towards immigrant groups and policy decisions that affect immigrant treatment in the United States. At UMSL, Adriano teaches policy research methods, the politics of public policy, inequality, the politics of prejudice and social justice, and public management. He is second generation in the United States. His family is from the Philippines. He has been a very special friend over the past couple of years, teaching a unique course in diversity and social justice, first offered in January 2011. At UMSL, we are a partner in that course. The goal of our involvement is to provide an experiential approach to traditionally lecture-based ways of engaging students around bias. Please welcome Dr. Adriano Udani.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening. All right. My name is Adriano Udani. I am pleased to be able to share with you some background on one of the ways that the ADL and the World of Difference Institute engages in anti-bias learning in higher education. In January 2011, with the support of Ron Yasmin, who recently retired as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at UMSL, Tabari Coleman helped create a course, the goal of which was to provide an experiential approach to the traditionally lecture-based way of engaging students with issues of diversity and identity. This course is housed in the department. Let's go. Let's clap for that. Thank you. The course is housed in my home department, the Department of Political Science, and is now called The Politics of Hate, Difference, and Justice. Students examine the concept of diversity at the intersections between race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexuality, age, ability, religion, and citizenship. We put an emphasis on helping students understand how these social structures of difference within systems of power have resulted in the marginalization of some groups. So relating how types of diversity intersect with each other rather than operate in isolation is a main theme of the course. And so Dean Yasmin discussed this course early on as one that helps develop the true citizen scholar. Now, I've had the honor and the opportunity to work with Tabari in teaching this class since 2013. Tabari's there. I see him right there. Tabari Coleman. Yeah. He's become a mentor, a friend, someone who I often look for guidance. But the discussions in our class, many of which have become quite heated, are facilitated by moderators from the World of Difference Institute, who help engage students in the controversial issues addressed in the course. Now, the last time that we taught this course was during the vivid 2016 presidential election, so we had a lot to talk about. And I think I'm glad that we did have the opportunity and also a venue to allow students to discuss and debrief of what they were watching in public discourse. One of the most memorable and also effective activities that many of my students come up to me on campus when I see them tell me about involves a fishbowl activity where we discuss the definitions of masculinity and femininity, which was facilitated by Tabari as well as another World of Difference moderator, Anita Wilson. It's called a fishbowl because some students form a circle and then other students are inside of the circle, kind of like a fishbowl. This exercise invited students to explore gender norms and the consequences we face when we go and act against them. So first, Tabari invited the men to sit inside the circle while women sat around them. Tabari drew a box on a sheet of paper and then asked the men, what does it mean to act like a man? Some responses involved acting tough, being strong, never crying, taking charge, not wearing clothes with too many bright colors. But after writing their answers down inside the box, Tabari then asked the men to list the consequences that men face when they step outside of that box. Some of those responses have involved being called a girl, being gay, weak or soft. It was Anita's turn now to draw the attention and draw a box and ask women, what does it mean to act like a lady? While the men listened. Some responses involved being proper, being deferential, being quiet, being soft-spoken. When Anita then asked the women about the consequences when women step outside of that box, some of those responses involved being called mannish, a nag, unruly, irrational, angry, often being told to settle down. I think this process and this journey that we take each of our students through is emblematic of the ADL and the World of Difference Institute and their approach to anti-bias learning. It builds upon our reflections, starting from childhood to adulthood. It encourages active listening, particularly to the voices of the marginalized. And it also fosters actions with everyday things that we could do in our normal life with an eye to structural reforms that would make this world more equitable and inclusive. It's this kind of activity that helps me as a researcher teach a body of evidence we have obtained about where prejudicial attitudes come from, how they're formed, how they're nurtured, but also nudge students and young adults to realize that our words, our actions, our intentions, our choices can really bolster systems of oppression. And so for this, I am grateful to work with the ADL, the World of Difference Institute, Karen, Dean Yasbin, and civic leaders like Tabari and Anita for offering their wisdom and skills to facilitate some difficult but yet important discussions and conversations in our region. So I thank you for your time. I hope everyone has a wonderful night.
Okay, can I ask Vicki Boutwell to come up? Great, one after another. Vicki Boutwell is the Senior Director of Institutional Philanthropy for the St. Louis Symphony. Tabari and I actually first met Vicki when she was with the Nine Network, another one of our partners, and engaged in a program some of you may know called American Graduates. And it's so nice that you can come back this evening to introduce the first of our musical presentations. We could honor Noemi a lot of ways. The best way I think we can do it tonight is to play music for her. Youth orchestra musicians are actually also doing a program tonight with our friends from the International Institute. So Anna, I'm really glad you're here because I think you've got a bunch of things going on at the Institute. It's called Cortango Orquesta. It's part of the Symphony's Music Without Boundaries program. So we just got everybody all over the neighborhood, huh? Please welcome Vicki Boutwell.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen. It's an honor to be here representing the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. On behalf of the SLSO and our entire family and our CEO, Marie-Helene Bernard, I want to congratulate Noemi and thank her so much. We are honored to be here, part of this very special evening. Noemi and Michael have been champions, true champions of the SLSO for more than 30 years, supporting our musicians as they fill Powell Hall and our community with music, and as we go on tour throughout the United States and abroad. Over the years, Noemi has given generously of her time and her talent as part of our Symphony Volunteer Organization, as well as on our board where she currently serves as vice chair. We are so grateful for her time and her expertise and her talents that she shares with us every day. This evening, I am so pleased to introduce three very talented musicians we have with us from our St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra: Theo Bockhorst on violin, Elizabeth Nguyen on viola, and Anna Gresh on cello. The St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra was founded in 1970 by Leonard Slatkin, whom you all know, and is a cornerstone of music education community in St. Louis. Tonight, our musicians will be playing Intermezzo Allegretto by Zoltán Kodály. Kodály is one of Hungary's most revered composers and was greatly influenced by the music of his homeland, drawing influence from folk music, dance, and culture. We chose this piece in honor of Noemi, whose commitment to the SLSO and music education has shaped what it means to be a young musician in St. Louis. Noemi, thank you. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, Intermezzo Allegretto.
Okay, we have a video now. Let's turn to that video and dim the lights.
What we gonna do? What we gonna do? A lot of things obviously happened on Friday, so it was really rough.
So let's jump right in. Tell us what happened on Friday.
That Jason stopped it. And we will not take this anymore! No!
And what was the reaction, would you say, of from you and your peers?
A lot of frustration and confusion, but also this has happened already in our city and it seems to keep happening.
When I was watching the news the other day, it was really emotional and it was really hard for me to see that. People are breaking windows, people are messing up other people's businesses because of how we actually feel. We can't express it.
So it was helpful to have a community of other peers around you to be able to process and reflect?
Well, it was interesting for me because, I don't know, I'm a white person living in this world and I could very easily go throughout my life and kind of be ignorant to everything. But to be able to sit in this room with all these people and listen to their reactions and how they felt, I'll never completely understand how people feel, but I feel like I'm much more knowledgeable than I ever was before.
My reaction to it was I'm kind of tired of it because I have so many friends that are African American. So for them, it was frustrating to see people are still going at the same thing over and over again.
You all are a part of one of the schools that did a walkout. Can you say a little bit more about that?
For me, it was just really important to remind people that it is still something that the youth care about. I think that every time we get to have a demonstration like that, it spreads the word and the message that young people really do hear about these issues. We see these things and we want to make a difference.
As you're going to go forth and hopefully spark these conversations in your high school, what do you do about the people that don't want to listen?
You have to be able to compromise. That's the most important part. You have to find a middle ground that you can both work together on.
If you keep continuing to have these conversations, eventually someone will give in and you'll be able to get through to them. But if you stop, then those conversations die.
So I'll have to disagree on the compromise. If you keep compromising, you're not going. It's just going to stay the same. So you're not going to get anywhere. You have to ignore those people, focus on the people who might or unsure. Try to lead them in the right direction. Keep doing what you think is right. The protesting works. It's proven to work.
Do you think that this was an issue that just impacted black people? No, right? How does racism impact all of us?
The first step is acknowledging that it still exists, because there's a lot of people who deny it.
I think it creates a rift between all the people in the community, especially when you have one group of people that are constantly bearing the weight of racism.
Another thing that I want to focus on in this piece is just hear a little bit the very baseline of why you guys are even in this training.
I feel like a lot of times when people make these big movements, they often wait until something happens. Like with the protests, they wait until the verdict is out instead of working while everything's peaceful. So I feel like having this group where we can kind of start that work even while nothing's really going on, I think that's really important.
the knowledge that I've gained and like conversational skills and how to actually like validate people's feelings and like have a conversation that's actually going to lead to some amount of change or understanding is so much more important than just the arguing that I feel like is always happening day to day.
This is something that isn't just impacting Webster, it isn't just impacting your school, this is about our whole community. What is the takeaway that you'd like for us to walk away with?
I think a lot of people operate from a place of maybe just ignorance, whether that be on purpose or just by coincidence or situation, and that it's actually, it would be in their benefit to possibly listen to people who may be younger than them or older than them or in the same age range as them who may be more knowledgeable on these types of things.
You're not going to get anywhere unless you have everything, and you'll learn that the other side is as much impactful as your opinion is. So when it comes to listening to everyone, it's mandatory if we're going to make a difference.
I think it's even more important to communicate with one another when we disagree than when we're agreeing, because it's impossible to make a difference if we just talk to each other and agree all the time.
If we're going to get any sort of change, we have to move forward and keep reminding kids of the past, just stop ignoring it.
One thing I've always learned is if you don't educate yourself or learn about the past, history will always repeat itself. And that's not really good for us.
Our youth, we have a voice, even though like I may just have like a small voice. Like all of us together, it's a big change. So if we all like stick together, we can all project our voices and we can bring about change.
So the Tabari Coleman that was being mentioned, you can see him here now. Tabari is the education director of our World of Difference Institute. The World of Difference Institute, which was started here in 1987, is ADL's largest education platform. And to say that this is where we get the meat of the work done, whether it's with students in Webster Groves High School, with police officers in Olivet, with folks in corporate communities, with schools, public, private, parochial, and charter, from early education, 0 to 8, K through 12, campus and beyond. This is where the work gets done. We wanted to take a few minutes to tell you what it really is, to share with you some specifics, to ask for your consideration and support. I can tell you there's no more important time right now to be doing this work, and we need you more than ever. So let me turn it over to Tabari. We'll go back and forth. We've been doing this for a long time. Tabari has been the project director for our office since August of 2008. So he's been having a pretty impressive impact for a good long time.
And since Karen has reminded you all that we've been working together for a long time, she won't be upset that I mentioned that I am the education director. I got a raise, I got a upgrade and a promotion, right? No longer the project director. So good evening and welcome. I appreciate you all being here. What you all just had an opportunity to see was a video that came out in October. It was a news report on KSDK coming out of Webster Groves High School, and what they were doing was highlighting our peer training program. This is a workshop where we come in and actually provide training for up to 30 high school youth. It's an experiential workshop where we actually spend 3 days. And when I say we, it's really our facilitators. And actually, one of our facilitators who worked with that group in Webster Groves, Aaron Stamp, is sitting at the table over there. Aaron, can you stand up for us and be recognized? Aaron and E. Nicole spent 3 days working with there were, I believe, 22 youth in that particular program, and what they did was created space for each other to be heard, to be listened to, and to think about ways that they could use their voices, that they could speak out about issues that were going on, not just in their schools and in their communities. And so we were really pleased that KSDK wanted to highlight the work that they were doing and to bring light to the issues that we know adults sort of wrestle with talking about. youth don't have those same apprehensions, so they speak their minds in different ways, and so we were really thankful for that. You all will notice on your tables, they were on your chairs, I'm sure you moved them to your tables, there's a sheet that says, "I will make a difference." And on this highlights for you all the various programs that we offer. This isn't an all-inclusive list. These are just some of the ways that you all can make an impact. And so I want to walk through a couple of these to give you a sense of what those look like. The first one at the $7,500 level, those are 2-year-long peer training or peer leadership program for middle and high school youth. This gives them their voice. This gives them a chance to engage with students at their schools. So it isn't adults coming in, it isn't facilitators coming in and telling young people what to think, but working with them so that way they are engaged peer-to-peer around what these issues look like, how they can be intentional about having these conversations. This, of all the programs we offer, is the one that I love the most. It's the one that is, for me, the most impactful because it's one of the few times we get a chance to spend that much time with young people. And they get a chance to learn and to grow and to practice and to become facilitators to be able to have these conversations. You'll notice at the $5,000 level, we've got our IB4LE program. So you're probably looking at that wondering, what is that? And I appreciated hearing from Chief Knox earlier and talking about our work with law enforcement. So this IB4LE is implicit bias for law enforcement. Each and every one of you sitting around this room right now knows that as you turn on the news every day, you're hearing incidents all over the country. And these are issues that we all have to be thinking more about. And our work with law enforcement throughout the country provides us a unique opportunity to engage law enforcement in conversations about the ways that bias manifests in those interactions. And so this is a chance for you all to understand and to support the work that law enforcement is doing and giving us an opportunity to go in and to support their work by having conversations about implicit bias, having conversations about the ways that prejudice and stereotypes show up all over our interactions. It happens with teachers, it happens in the workplace, it happens with law enforcement, and you can support us by understanding and supporting that program. We've got our professional development for No Place for Hate schools. With that, we go in. Our No Place for Hate program is a chance for schools to be to set forth in a campaign that supports individual and group differences, specifically asking a school community to come together to talk about the ways that racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, all of those are showing up. One of the things that we're clear about over the last year is that there has been a huge uptick in the ways that schools are reaching out to us saying there have been incident after incident after incident, and we need support and we need help. And they're asking us to come in and provide support for them, and we need your support to help us be able to do that. Then we have our family dinner and dialogue. Anytime a school asks me or a group asks me, what can we do? I say, you can't just work with young people, you also have to spend time engaging their families. It is not enough to have conversations with young people and not provide the resources for their families so they can also have those conversations. And so this dinner and dialogue is a chance for our facilitators to go into various communities and say, hey, let's talk. Let's break bread, have a conversation about the issues that we see going on, because none of us in this room have it figured out. None of us. And so when you bring a group together to have a conversation in a meaningful and intentional way, I think it helps move those conversations forward in a very productive way. And so at the $1,000 level, you can support us in doing that. Our current events classroom, as I said, you're seeing daily. Every day there's an issue showing up, an issue that really involves the work that we cover. And so through the current events classroom, we're putting out resources on our website for educators so that way they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to come up with a lesson plan to talk about #MeToo or Black Lives Matter or immigration. We have those resources. This gives us a chance to go in and work with schools, with teachers, with educators, with administrators, and talk to them specifically about how to have these conversations in meaningful ways. This $500 level allows us to go in and to be able to do that in a number of different schools in a very meaningful way. And then our law enforcement and society program at the Holocaust Museum, you all had a chance to see the video. Well, maybe they didn't see the video of that.
That was on the air.
That was on the air, okay. Well, so we're still live, right? So in this moment, maybe they can't edit that out because I'm live. But you all can go back and check it out later on. I'll let Karen talk to you a little bit more about the law enforcement in society. But, you know, that's a chance for officers to think about the ways that the police acted during the Holocaust, and for them to think about how that's relevant today in their interactions with the community and the public. And so you all can come in at the $250 level and support that. We offer anti-bias study guides, right? I feel like I'm talking a lot right now, so I want to sort of get through this because I know you all are interested in continuing to engage, but I want to make sure you know that with our anti-bias study guides, with the resources that we offer, we are coming in and giving not only hands-on training for educators, families, students, but we also have additional resources, and this makes that available to them. Those anti-bias study guides are everything from examining bias, challenging bias, looking at their various identities, looking at action planning, things that they can do, giving teachers, educators resources in the classroom to work on that right away. And then look, if you just want to support the work that we do, you've been hearing from Dr. Udani, you've been hearing from Gedlu, you're going to hear from Karen again. We're doing really good work in this community. No one right now can say that they are not moved by what's happening around us and the way that the community is reacting. It doesn't matter what side of the situation you're on. All of us are impacted by this. And I think we all have a responsibility to young people to make sure that we are providing the space for them to be able to have these conversations, to know how to have them in meaningful ways. And your support of us tonight allows us to be able to effectively do that. And we need you to continue to support us in that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen and let her say a little bit more.
Where is Grace? Where's Grace? Here you are. Come on up. Grace Schmidt had an opportunity in the last year to participate in a program we have called the National Youth Leadership Mission to Washington. And with the help of Rhoda and Sam Nussbaum and a bunch of others in this room, we were able to take 10 youths from a variety of different schools to Washington, where they spend 3.5 days in really intensive study through the World of Difference Institute, but they also go to Capitol Hill and they go to the Holocaust Museum and they meet with a variety of folks. And it's one of those life-changing opportunities. And the kids who participated in this program are stupendous, and thankfully one of them is with us tonight. Grace Schmidt, come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Schmidt. I am currently a 17-year-old senior at Narings Hall High School in Webster Groves. And to answer your question, no, I don't know where I'm going to college. At the end of my sophomore year, I was chosen as a St. Louis delegate to participate in the 2016 National Youth Leadership Mission held in Washington, D.C. The National Youth Leadership Mission, or NYLM, is an uncommon and priceless experience. We, student leaders from around the world, are taken out of our everyday lives and placed in an isolated environment where questions, diversity, and individuality are held to the utmost importance. In sharing my time in NYLM, there are 2 experiences I need to share. During NYLM, delegates met in mixed groups of 25 students multiple times per day throughout the trip. I found the small group portion of NYLM to be one of the most influencing aspects of my experience. During our small groups, we held multiple intense discussions, participated in simulations, posed challenging questions to ourselves, and listened to those around us, learning from their experiences. I will be honest, my entire life I have grown up in a bubble. In my grade school community, everyone was white, Catholic, and economically stable. As a child, before I went to school, I thought everyone in the country was Catholic, and everyone in Webster Groves was white. I met my first African-American friend on my first day of high school at the age of 14. So when I entered my small group at NYLM for the first time in my life, I was in the minority. I was the only white, Catholic, German-Irish female in the room. My upbringing was unique for the first time, and I felt like I could actually bring a unique perspective in my small group. Everyone in my small group was different, and these differences united us towards one common goal: to become world changers. I realized during our first small group discussion that the differences between us did not deter our perspective, but enhanced our own reasoning. Our commonality was our aspiration to create a world without bias and a world without hate, despite our differences. This upon itself was one of the greatest lessons I was taught at NYLM. Throughout my experience on NYLM, there were moments of utter brilliance, moments of empathy and sympathy, moments of great exacerbation at problems facing our world, but there were also moments of profound contemplation. When I visited the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, I was overcome with a devastating sense of loss. During my visit, my hands were clammy and my stomach churned. I walked the museum alone, giving myself space from my group of 127 peers. For those who have not had the opportunity to visit the Holocaust Museum, it is 4 floors of grotesque hatred. Visitors are exposed to the rawness of humanity and the power of hate. Images of children and families being torn apart meet you at every level. Images of dead bodies scatter the museum. Visitors come face to face with the worst of humanity. As I advanced through the museum, a specific TV screen caught my eye. I peered to look at the screen, and I was met with a video of Auschwitz prisoners. The video depicted the forced medical trials tested on the prisoners of Auschwitz. One clip showed a man's veins forcibly injected with dirty seawater to see if his body could function. I watched as another Jewish man was put in a low-pressure chamber in order to test altitude soldiers could safely deploy their parachutes. I watched as many prisoners were injected with diseases to test different drugs, and I watched their victims killed for purposes of dissection. When I finished the video, I began to hyperventilate. All the air was sucked out of my body. I sat down and curled into a ball. I felt the sudden urge to vomit, and I was drenched in sweat. I could not stop the overwhelming thoughts. What if this happens again? Could this happen again? What if that was me? What if that was my mom, my brother, my dad, my sister? I'm telling you this story because at that moment when I was curled in a ball, straining to breathe, I thought about the perseverance of the Jewish nation. I thought about their strength and heroism to go on and teach the world about this horrific crime against humanity. A flame sparked inside of me, a rush of anger swept through me, and at that specific moment, I was changed. When I was lying on the ground, I made a promise to myself to become an agent for social change and a challenger of injustices in thought. I also promised myself that even in the midst of despair, I would be a leader and a voice for the voiceless. NYLM gave me an opportunity to learn, grow in my leadership, and mature in my thoughts. It gave me a platform for confidence and skills to enact societal development. The experience was incredible because of my peers and their passion for change. My generation is a generation filled with strong-willed and open-minded individuals who will leave their mark on the world. NYLM taught me how to change the world. It taught me how to speak out against hate, engage in civil discourse, and promote equality for all people. I began my journey with ADL nervous, lacking the confidence to view myself as a leader. As I left DC on November 16th, I left with the confidence to educate my peers and lead them towards greater social change. So on behalf of myself and all the other delegates, I would like to thank the ADL for their support in making me and my fellow delegates of the 2016 National Youth Leadership Mission for making me and them into the leaders we are today. Thank you.
So that's how ADL does what it does. And this actually represents an extraordinary thing for us. Let me also share that my office, which covers eastern Kansas and Missouri and southern Illinois, has 3 full-time staff. Myself, that gentleman, and Tasha Kaminsky in the back, our development director. So I would say this year, roughly, based upon what I know of my budgeting, 85% of the dollars we raise go directly to program and service delivery. For those of you who feel that that's important, you should know that. So there's an envelope on your table that's a little manila envelope that has a red, sort of a yellow and white, no place for hate sticker on it. If you feel compelled to fill this out, you can put it in that envelope, or you can mail it to us, or if you really, you can scan it in and email it. There are a lot of different ways. Take a picture with your phone, and we'll say thank you. And we'll tell you that we promise to be great caregivers of the dollars you share with us tonight. Thank you, and thank you. Okay. Moving on, Tim. Tim O'Leary has been General Director of Opera Theater of St. Louis since 2008, and since then has been a leader in musical as well as community innovation. At the close of this coming season, I am sad to say that he will take on his next role as General Director of the Washington National Opera in D.C., something I used to attend a lot growing up. While it is too soon to offer any formal farewell tonight, I do want to say that ADL's values of showing respect for difference, even on issues near and dear to one personally, are impressively a part of the way in which Tim has accomplished his work while at Opera Theater. I expect ADL will stay. I will make sure ADL stays close as he moves to DC. Little known fact, he is a childhood friend of our CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, so that helps. Please welcome Tim O'Leary.
Good evening, friends. On behalf of everyone at Opera Theater of St. Louis, I am honored to be here to introduce a special singer to perform in tribute to a special person. We are grateful to Karen Oresti for inviting us to help honor a person we think of as a friend, but who is also the chairman of the board of Opera Theater of St. Louis, Noemi Neidorff. You know, Noemi Neidorff. It's a lucky thing in your life when you realize you found a role model. I've been fortunate to have this experience a couple of times. In one case, it was when I met my predecessor at Opera Theater, Charles McKay. And then I got to know Noemi Neidorff and her husband, Michael, and I realized it had happened again. These are two people of such integrity, character, warmth, and generosity that knowing them for me has been a daily experience of being inspired to be better. They're the most wonderful friends to my wife, Kara, and me, as I know they are to many of you. But for me, working with Noemi as chairman of the board has made me better at my job. It has made our organization immeasurably stronger. It has allowed Opera Theater to pursue its mission with greater excellence. And our singer tonight is someone who embodies our mission. Raina Campbell grew up in the St. Louis area and graduated from Belleville East High School. While there, she was accepted as part of Opera Theater's Monsanto Artists in Training program for the region's most talented high school singers. The program provides a weekly college-level voice lesson to about 25 students per year, with an emphasis on helping to make sure that the students go on to attend college. In Raina's case, she is now an undergraduate at the prestigious Manhattan School of Music, which happens to be the alma mater of tonight's honoree, Noemi. Raina is going to sing a beautiful song. It's called Long Time Ago. No one is quite sure of the precise origin of the song. It dates back to the early 19th century in America, but it was arranged in 1950 by the great American composer Aaron Copland, part of a series that he called Old American Songs. Copland was a first-generation American of Lithuanian Jewish descent, and like so many Americans before and since, he took his own heritage and wove it together with the existing traditions of this country to create something new and beautiful. Over the course of centuries, this is, of course, how the definition of the word American has continued to expand, to include more and more and more of us. In this case, Aaron Copland arranged an old song about dreamy moments of the past. We offer it, though, with hope for the future and with gratitude for the generosity of the Neidorffs and of this community that makes it possible for Opera Theater to nurture artists like Raina, who represent the future of the arts. Apparently I'm verklempt. We are also deeply grateful for the support of all of you for the Anti-Defamation League, making it possible for them to continue to advocate for the America we all hope for, a place of justice, inclusion, and love. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in welcoming, accompanied by pianist Gail Hintz, soprano Raina Campbell.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Raina. Okay, we're in the home stretch. At the end of October, through the Women in Leadership program at Maryville University, our special friends from Maryville are here tonight, so we can say thank you for that particular program. Noemi shared a bit more about herself than I'd ever heard about her family's travels to the United States, and County Executive Stenger alluded to them. Actually, she and her parents really didn't travel here. They fled from Hungary at the time of the Battle of Budapest and the onset of the October Revolution in 1956. She was in the 3rd grade. They lived in fear at a time when mail was censored, phones were tapped. Noemi explained that day that she learned really early on how to keep a secret. The days and week before they decided to leave included the killing of many, dead bodies in the streets outside the family's apartment building, Hungarian and Russian soldiers going door to door in a show of force against anyone perceived to be opposition, one pivotal incident where the apartment was sprayed with gunfire. An attempt to leave at great cost, financially and physically, was not successful. Time spent at a police station, interrogation, hunger, and eventually actually walking out of Budapest over 2 days to reach Austria. Noemi's mother, Alicia Kornitzer-Karpati, of blessed memory, wrote of the family's history from the time that she was born in 1917 until the family arrived in Elizabeth, New Jersey in January of 1957. This is the book. I recommend it, Walking in the Shadow of Tyranny. Noemi was 8 years old. She spoke no English. Later, in the 10th grade, she wrote an essay about the experience called Escape to Freedom. It won first prize in the school's literary contest, and it expressed the feelings that would frame her engagement in community for the future. She started it, quote, "It all began on October 23rd, 1956, a day that was destined to change the lives of thousands of Hungarians like me, the day that the world will remember as the start of the Hungarian Revolution." And it ended. By a miracle, in 3.5 weeks, we were in our promised land of freedom, the United States of America. She said on October 30th at the event with Maryville, she said, and I wrote it down, quote, "Thank God for the freedom of this country. It is because of it that I must do my part to help others in need, knowing how proud I am and that I am and always will be an immigrant." Noemi began playing the piano very well at age 4, something that has impacted her community work, as you've heard, lifting up music for youth and in the arts, the Opera Theater, the Symphony, Washington University Music Department, the History Museum, the St. Louis Art Museum, Sing for Sightman, the Radio Arts Foundation, and certainly beyond St. Louis, at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., and at the Manhattan School of Music in New York, and there are others. It is a now familiar story. Among those who work in immigrant and refugee communities, a shout out to our friends at the International Institute and the Mosaic Project, that they become devoted to community and have great capacity for success and end up giving back, often with substantial impact. Noemi is in this remarkable group. So if I can ask you to come up officially. So, the ADL's Torch of Liberty Award was established to honor those who seek to preserve our heritage of liberty, freedom, equality, and democracy. It recognizes those who particularly demonstrate courage, potency, and commitment to building community. Your musical life and your history as an immigrant define your personal impact on the arts, youth, and education for so many, and it is with this in mind that we honor you tonight and consider, during this singular time in history, the value of the immigrant experience and the special commitment to building community that new Americans influence on a daily basis. So the award this year, let's see if I can do it this way. It's a piece of artwork designed by St. Louis-based Barry Williams. It was part of a special project, as you can see, between the ADL and the Missouri History Museum, commemorating 150 years of Jewish life in the region. It was part of a traveling exhibit called Fulfilling the American Dream, which included a photographic collection that originated in Washington, D.C., and traveled around the country, closed here in April of 1986, and then was sent to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. That's the first part. There's more? Yeah, there's more. And then, about 3 weeks ago, the Anti-Defamation League produced and commissioned a brand new book called The Good Fight, America's Ongoing Struggle for Justice. It vividly depicts the human face of our unfortunately sporadically violent, always risky struggle to fulfill the promise of freedom and equality for all. It's technologically modern, so there are certain things where you can put your phone and take a picture and it will give you the whole history of the event that happened. And it's a pretty funky thing. It's by Rick Smolin, who is the National Geographic photographer who created the Day in the Life series. So we want to thank you and say our congratulations to you tonight. So here, I'll move this stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. My goodness, to say that I'm overwhelmed would be an understatement. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to salute Karen Oresti and the Anti-Defamation League. You continue to inspire, to make a difference, to educate people about bigotry, hate, intolerance, and persecution. We salute and applaud you in your work to build a more inclusive and respectful world. So bravo to all that you do. I believe it is only appropriate and fitting for me to recognize last year's distinguished Torch of Liberty honoree, Senator Jack Danforth. His leadership, his integrity, courage, indeed, his great humanitarian deeds continue to inspire us all. As for me, I'm honored and humbled more than words can ever express. I would like to accept the Torch of Liberty Award in honor and in loving memory of my parents, Alicia and George Carpati. I vividly recall their struggles, their courage and determination to realize their ultimate dream, that was to embrace the freedom of these great United States and to instill in me the pride of being an American and to never, ever take our precious freedom for granted. While I am a grateful American citizen, I realize I'll always be an immigrant, just one of millions who sought refuge from oppression, bigotry, persecution, and anti-Semitism. And it is through my parents' wisdom, their teachings, their patriotism, that I look toward that torch of liberty as a lasting symbol of freedom and a true beacon of hope for us all. I know my parents would thank you, but I want to thank you for this humble, most meaningful honor. I am really, really humbled and deeply grateful, and especially to the Anti-Defamation League. Thank you so much.
All right, so as our musicians are making their way back up, I'd like to thank again Centene, Monsanto, Maryville, who I failed to mention the first go-around, so Maryville, thank you very much, the Estates, Nancy and Ken Kranzberg, Sabin Wealth Management Group of Wells Fargo, the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, the Steinberg Family Foundation, and Bonnie and Gary Vicker, all of our volunteers, and especially Tasha Kaminsky, wherever she is, who is our development director, who wrangled all of the details, and not only this, but for those that don't know, between our Distinguished Service Award for Law Enforcement on the 8th of December, the 7th annual Hanukkah Hullabaloo, which this year was a benefit concert by Brothers Lazaroff for ADL on the 9th of December, and this event tonight has handled more than her fair share. To all the members of the ADL Regional Advisory Board who are here today, we cannot do the work without you. And in particular to our volunteer friends who helped and helped and helped, Marianne Smiley Sabin, Paul Kravitz, Weston Manley, Rhiannon Kay, Alex Clardy, Rose Terranova, Marcy Handler, Jeremy Brenner, Tammy Arno, Jenny Hoffman-Mento, Weston Bays, Robbie Frank, and Rhoda Kahn Nussbaum. So, for the final musical offering tonight, a special song. It was written by Irving Berlin, and in 1938 he recalled, "I worked for a while on a song called Thanks America, but I didn't like it. I tried again with this song called Let's Talk About Liberty, but I didn't get very far. It was too much like making a speech to music. It then occurred to me to re-examine an old song of mine, God Bless America, which I had originally written in 1918 while serving in the Army in upstate New York. Berlin then told a journalist, I'd like to write a great peace song, but it's hard to do because you have trouble dramatizing peace. Well, we think he did it pretty well, and we ask you to join with our young artists in the singing of God Bless America, with thanks to the St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra and Opera Theater of St. Louis, HEC-TV, Dennis Riggs, Boyd Pickup, and all the crew with presenter Suzanne Vanderhoff. We'll conclude Happy Holidays and Happy New Year.